Seth Nike reporting to you live from Johannesburg, South Africa. It's an awesome day, beautiful weather outside. Yes, others will call it AKA Lower Alberton. That's where I'm at. They'll say LA, but I'll say Lower Alberton. It's awesome being with you all, and apologies for those of you that were waiting on us. I am in studio today with Glenda Wildschut, a person that I will say is known to me as a friend and a colleague, and definitely in some ways a person in the reconciliation work that I've looked up to and honored over the many years. While I was still a student at Bethel University and then working there as well, I got to come into contact with Glenda Wildschut through the work that I did with Dr. John Formink and the Cornerstone Christian College in the Western Cape. Today, out of Plumstead in the Western Cape, we'll be having Glenda Wildschut. For those of you that have become accustomed to the show, in such a time as this, we are having conversational story sharing around issues of, well, COVID-19, racism, gender-based violence, and in the last month of September and now October, we've been focusing on heritage and well-being. Today, I have one who has lived a while, I won't say long enough, but has lived a while to have observed our country and possibly knows a lot more because of a lived experience of the heritage and what has transpired in South Africa. And in some way, this conversation will help us position ourselves today to possibly what we can consider of ideas and thoughts around the well-being of our country. So friends, without further ado, I know that some of you would have been obviously inconvenienced by us not coming on at 12:30, but what the power of online broadcast is that it will land here on my page and it will be there. So if you're out there now, some of the viewers that have come online, please share it. Share the content. But right here, right now, on In Such a Time as This, it's my honor, Seth Nike, to host the show, but more especially to bring on live Glenda Wildschut. She's in studio. There we go. Hey, Glenda.
Hi, Seth. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Tell me about all this glitchy stuff and online stuff and Wi-Fi this and Wi-Fi that.
Oh my goodness. And so fortunately, we have some backup.
We did.
And
we definitely
we have some techno-skilled young people in the home.
Beautiful. And
who could help us get going. Because
yes,
you know, Seth, I'm a techno peasant.
I've heard things like, we got to be talking about data justice because there's a data divide.
Yeah.
So, Glenda, please tell us where you're coming to us from today. I know yesterday when we did the test and all the technology was working, then today we had a few glitches. So to you that are online with us and will see this resource, our apologies for starting up a bit later. But here we have Glenda. Glenda, please greet those of the folk that will get the resource and be with us on this live.
It's such a pleasure to greet people. I mean, lockdown has taught us to greet into the ether because we know there's so many people there in the ether that will receive our greetings, receive our blessings, receive all the goodwill that comes from our hearts, even though we don't know who's out there. So to everybody out there, hi from Plumstead, sometimes called Slumstead.
So those of you that are in different parts of the world, this is Glenda Wildschut coming to us from Plumstead in the Western Cape, while I'm coming to you all from LA, Lower Alberton in Johannesburg. So while technology has been some issues to manage, at least it brings us together.
Yes.
Glenda, it's been a long time since I've seen you well. Not that long, actually. The last conference we were at was at the Justice Conference at UWT.
Yes. It was a fabulous, wonderful time, again, of reconnection, not just with those that are like-minded, but also those who have slightly different takes on what reconciliation is all about. We had some visitors from Germany who've experienced the sequela or the consequences of the Holocaust, and have been doing some reconciliation work in that space. We've had some people from other parts of the world where reconciliation was absolutely important to focus on in some of our African neighbors. And so it made us also rethink and reconsider our story of reconciliation, and to re-look at how much we still have to do.
Well, friends, as you hear and I hear you today, Glenda, we can't speak to you without hearing the word reconciliation.
No.
It's been part of your life. It's been part of your journey. And it's really just a great honor to have you here with us in studio. Friends, by doing justice to our guests that we have with us on In Such a Time as This, we try to take a moment just to read about who they are and where they're from. And I've got a profile that has been given to me by Glenda's people. So let me please, by doing justice and honor to Glenda Wildschut, read a little bit about her as we work with leaders from around the world and even in South Africa. Those of you that are coming online, In Such a Time as This has over the last 6 months brought people like Glenda and many others who have many years ago in their journey decided to work for the equality and justice of all. And so while you may say, but where do I find these justice people, these equitable thinking people? Can you imagine over the last 6 months while we've been in lockdown, today is 201 days of lockdown in South Africa, we've been able to profile and share with you the stories and thought leadership of people over 6 months. So here we go with Glenda Wildschut. Glenda is an independent consultant and facilitator and was until recently the Director of Transformation at the University of Cape Town. She is currently the chair of the Institute for Justice and Reconciliation. Congratulations, Glenda. I'm so excited about that. And I know Stan Henkeman and the people of IJR are going to have an awesome time with you. And an advocate for social cohesion in the Department of Arts and Culture. She's a human rights activist and also provides an extensive executive coaching program and works to assist leaders, particularly women, in leadership positions to be more effective in their roles. In 1995, she was appointed, you better hear this, everybody, by President Nelson Mandela to serve as a commissioner on the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission under the chairmanship of the Nobel Peace Laureate Archbishop Desmond Tutu. A few weeks ago, we celebrated the 89th birthday of Bishop Tutu, and today we also celebrate the birthday of his beautiful wife, Mother Leah. Serving on the Reparation and Rehabilitation Committee as a regional convener during her tenure on the commission. So friends, this Glenda Wildschut has been one who has rubbed shoulders with, if I can say, the humble top of the tops of our country, okay? And so really when I say it's an honor to have her, it's not because she's just about the titles and the organization, but she's been a servant of the people. In 1998, she worked at the WHO, World Health Organization, at the headquarters in Geneva, examining the role of health workers in transitional societies. On behalf of the African National Congress, the ANC, she co-chaired the placement board that facilitated the integration of all military health personnel into the National Defense Force and was involved in numerous structures to facilitate the transition to democracy in South Africa, including the Transitional Executive Council. Her special interests are violence, trauma, and torture rehabilitation, women and children in armed conflict, health workers and their contribution to post-war reconstruction, impunity, truth, and reconciliation. Friends, with that little reading of a profile, a summarized profile, I give you all Glenda Wildschut. Glenda, I know it's not always comfortable hearing one's profile, but that's you. I mean, what an amazing journey from health into activism, working with the president, working with Bishop Tutu. Do you still love being a nurse?
I love being a nurse. I really do. And in fact, just in the last year or so, I went back to my original training and original work, and got involved with an advanced course in psychiatric nursing at the University of Stellenbosch. So there I was, back to almost my beginnings. And I must say that that has really given me a lot of skills that I didn't know I would use in the future. I have a little story about that, but maybe I should keep the story for a little bit later.
Please share it with us. I mean, we've got you here.
Yeah.
Let me just say, Glenda, isn't this amazing? I just want to say, it's an epiphany just dropped on me right now, right here. Here we have a person in the global disaster on COVID-19 that has rocked the world. We have a nurse who's with us. It seems, there, she's back. We have a nurse who's with us who understands justice issues and has a clear focus around addressing issues of racism and gender-based violence. I mean, talk about compounding interests of pandemics and shadow pandemics. So please tell us the story about the nursing. Okay. We are all here.
Yeah, so in my first year at UWC, it was actually a year of a lot of activism and a lot of protests against the odious system that we had of apartheid. And so I joined the nursing department as a student nurse there. And one of the first instructions we got was that we are not to be involved politically. You are here to do your nursing, and you may not get involved politically. Of course, I did not obey that instruction. And so at one particular protest meeting, the Cape Times the next day had a full front picture of us protesting, and there I was in full view of the entire readership of the Cape Times on the front page. So of course my professor saw that, and immediately they were very angry and called me onto the red carpet, and she said to me, "You are so stupid. You will never become anything in this world. You are so stupid to be involved politically." And she said it in Afrikaans. It sounds much worse in Afrikaans than it does when I say it in the translated English. And that day, I decided that I was going to prove her wrong. So I have been acknowledged by the International Council of Nursing during its centenary celebrations as one of the 3 most accomplished nurses, and honored by the International Council of Nursing. I wish that day when I received the award in London, where they celebrated the International Council of Nursing, and I was celebrated as one of the 3 most, what do they call it? Nurses of the decade. I wish that professor were there to see that she was proved absolutely wrong.
Wow, what a story to tell.
Yeah,
Glenda, and you know, as of recent times, I know that you are now the chairperson of IJR. I mean, I'm sure there's excitement around the network and the family and community of IJR. What an amazing organization that continues to do justice and reconciliation work, hailing out of Cape Town. but nationally and globally recognized. Tell us a little bit about your work currently. I mean, obviously, I've followed you for many years, where you're at and what you're doing, and what are some of the, in the not too distant future, what are you looking forward to doing within the space of IJR as the chairperson?
Yes. So, I mean, it's an absolute honor to be nominated or appointed as the chair. I've been on the board for quite a long time now. I'm not going to give away my vintage. I also served as chairperson of the board of the Institute for Healing of Memories. And these are like organizations, similar organizations, in that with the Institute for Healing of Memories, we work with people through narrative and storytelling and a particular healing process to deal with the stories of the past and help to plot a way forward for healing in the future. Now, there are those elements within the IJR as well, where IJR has, for example, a community healing project, where there are communities, of course, that have been divided politically, racially, and divided on all of these lines that seem to separate us. But when one gets back down to the actual nub of our humanity, who we are as human beings, our stories connect us. So within, for example, an Afrikaner community, there's the story of the South African War or the Anglo-Boer War, stories of concentration camps, stories of dispossession, stories of relocation, as there are stories of those of us who have experienced dislocation, loss, grief, humiliation, concentration, detention, torture, all of those things. And when one brings these communities together, those stories, those common stories, help with insight into the behavior of a particular community and why people, it helps to explain why people behave in a particular way. And it helps to give us a sense of how we can forge together a healing process. So I really do believe that storytelling and sharing can help us to bring communities, individuals, families together, and that the solutions to healing lie within the story, lie within the narrative.
Wow. And that's going to take us into this next moment, as you've heard Glenda share with us about the work she's done with or has done over years, but now as the newly appointed chairperson of IJR that are using narrative. Also the organization that is connected with Father Michael Lapsley, the Institute of Healing of Memories. We're grateful for beautiful organizations that continue, more especially in the non-profit sector, to hold our country accountable, to remind our country of our heritage, where we've come from, where we're at, and where we ought to be. And friends, let's be assured, comrade and nurse and justice activist Glenda Wildschut has been one amongst many, but definitely one that has been honored amongst many to do this work. So as we cut away from the screen right now, I'm going to bring you a video from another organization that is known to us. For myself, it's been 10 years of an association with them. For Glenda, she knows of them nationally. Heartlines that has been doing a campaign called What's Your Story? And as we watch this, I'd like you to watch it in light of the conversation today. If we are to consider heritage and well-being, how do we close the gaps between the I and the other? Heartlines over the last 6 years, thereabouts, have been allowing or through their work, creating experiences that have allowed for us to close the gaps between the I and the other, those that are on one side of the railway tracks and those that are on a total different side of the railway tracks, to build with the projection relationships of empathy, understanding, and trust. So please check this video out with us as we consider in the next moment a short story, but an insightful story of the personal story of Glenda Wildschut. Check out this video right now.
The world moves fast around us. Sometimes it feels like a blur. We pass each other and make judgments of each other constantly. You're doing it right now, seeing this woman across the street. We cross and recross, but rarely connect. We struggle to understand each other, so we don't trust each other. I know your name, but I don't know who you are. You know my name, but do you know my story? What would help us see beyond our perceptions? Story. Our stories are what make us human. Stories have the power to overcome our perceptions. Sharing a story isn't hard. It's a simple human act, connecting us deeper to people we already know. Reach out, ask, invite, then listen, truly listen. Stories have the power to overcome our perceptions. They help us understand. Ask, listen, tell. It's our way of building our nation. Heartlines has developed resources to help you on this journey. These resources will empower you to build understanding, trust, and reconciliation through personal storytelling. Imagine if we were part of a powerful wave of change, one story at a time. We all have a story to tell. What's your story?
An awesome journey for me to work with Heartlines over the last 10 years. I'm in studio with Glenda Wildschut, and she just lined up with us and for us a little bit about her journey over the last years. We've been having some technical glitches, so we apologize with the Wi-Fi and so on, but really just an awesome time. Glenda is in studio with me. Let me bring her on into the screen. Here we go. Glenda, the What's Your Story work that we've been doing in some ways has connections to what IJR is doing, many other organizations. But what's been awesome is that we've been able to engage with people through a national campaign. Up until March, we had a count of about 18,000 people. And also with, if I may say, an award-winning movie, Beyond the River, that allows people to think again in different ways around issues of reconciliation, justice, because we find that many folk are kind of fatigued when they hear reconciliation, you know, especially the kind that we're talking hubbly-bubbly, the peaceful reconciliation that has no connection to economic justice. People are tired of it. You know, and in the diversity landscape of the work that we've done over years, I find that some folk are also, as soon as they hear you talking about reconciliation, in the corporate world, it's like, hey, we did that. We done that. We won the T-shirt, we ticked the box. In the social sector world, on social justice issues, people have seen reconciliation almost as weak, you know. But this campaign, What's Your Story, has allowed us to give a different angle, if I may say, a different connection place for the work of justice and reconciliation again. I hope you enjoyed the video, and possibly we can see more of it going around the country.
So I think that when you're talking about justice, for me, I often think about justice in a much more holistic sense than just looking at, say, for example, economic justice or social justice or reconciliation in its narrow form. Because I think that all the aspects of justice are linked. Social justice linked very closely with economic justice and legal justice. All of these things are linked to each other. And unless one looks at it in a much more holistic sense, we are able to move much further down the reconciliation pathway. I think that when we're talking about reconciliation, we're also talking about the aspect of reparation, reconciliation, reparation, rehabilitation, all of those aspects, redress. And unless all of those aspects are dealt with, we will not be able to achieve a holistic sense of justice.
Thank you for that. I love the R's: rehabilitation, reconstruction. Reconciliation cannot be reconciliation if there's no redistribution.
Yes.
And some of the rewords and some of those words, even as we think of them poetically, gets us thinking deeper. And I got this quote: all aspects of justice out of the mouth of Glenda Wildschut are linked. We must look at justice in a holistic sense. Glenda, from your personal story, I mean, there's much you can tell about the life that you've lived, the work you've done. But what have you decided to share with us today as we get to listen in this personal story sharing time? So over to you as you share with us, maybe if I can say it like this, behind the titles, the story that's behind the story. Who is or what is the story of Glenda Wildschut?
Yeah. Often I surprise people when I tell them that my dream as a young teenager was to be an opera singer. And I in fact have quite a high qualification as a classical singer. I managed to do a performance licentiate with the Royal Schools of Music and Trinity College of Music, London. So I have another career path that I was plotting out for myself. But as you know, coming from a particular community on the Cape Flats, to become an opera singer was not something that we could aspire to, but perhaps not achieve. I'm the eldest in a family of 5, and I had to think about going into a career that I could earn while I learn, and then also plow back into the rest of the siblings and the rest of the family. But that for me was a very fantastic choice. I really am very happy that I did not choose the other path, but that I could use my skill and my talent as a singer as a way of, I suppose, a way of healing.
Wow.
So working with torture, working with detention, working with people who are operating in exile, and people who are coming from exile and were underground during those dark days, especially during the 80s and early 90s. My music for me was a way of escape and a way of healing. And so instead of becoming a a solo opera singer. I enjoy choral music. And so I am still now a member of the Cape Town Symphony Choir. I sang in the Cape Town Philharmonic Choir before, and that's where my love lies.
Wow, 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 wow. I mean, I knew you were an artist of words and communication and facilitation, but also a choir singer doing choral music. And thank you for sharing that with us. How do you reflect on it now when you think upon, I definitely can see that you see the positive side. But do you ever wonder, like when you think upon the past, had life been like this, what could have taken place?
Yes, yeah. Well, um, a few years ago, just after the work of the TRC, I was invited by the University of Siena in Italy to present a few modules on reconciliation and healing for a few years. I always joke that going to Siena in Italy to present that module was my punishment. Tuscany.
A nice kind of punishment.
Tuscany is such a beautiful, beautiful part of the world. And I had this amazing, stayed in this amazing 12th century, it's called a certosa, a monastery, a rehabilitated, reconstructed monastery, which belonged to the University of Siena. And in my bedroom were these beautiful 12th century frescoes on the walls made by the monks who stayed in this certosa. So it was a very beautiful time. But that's not what I want to say. The story actually is that there I was in the provinces where the beautiful opera music was composed. We know that Giuseppe Verdi stayed near Pisa, where the Leaning Tower of Pisa, which is also in a similar district. And so there I was trudging around, in a place where opera was just in every molecule, in every aspect of that community. So I really wished that one day I could have stood on the stage in Milan, in one of these opera houses, La Scala, and sing. So it was a bittersweet also time for me, thinking about what was possible. I could have been a famous opera singer. But I think that God had another plan for me, and that the music was part of what I could use in my work as a psychiatric nurse, as a healer, as a facilitator. I could use music metaphor in many of those settings.
Yes, and I know Stang Henkemann, who currently works at IJR as a director, spoke to me of his work as well in the prisons when he used the song by Jackson, Man in the Mirror. A beautiful story that he told of shaping an entire training program for convicted people that were serving sentences, but again with the focus of how do we bring reparation and healing and quieting the storms of the traumas of life. So a beautiful way to continue. Glenda, thank you for sharing with us of your story. I want to take a moment with you and ask just to honor Mam Leah with her own words. I played it in another show of ours, but because it's her birthday, a beautiful moment of what one may consider, how is it that we're able to keep joy and keep laughter and keep music in the traumas of life? But let's hear the words of Mamlia at another birthday celebration of Bishop Tutu. But as we think upon the Tutus and the life that they've lived and the work they've done, we want to honor and celebrate Mamlia today and wish her happy birthday with her own words. So let's check this out. And we'll give her solo place while Glenda and I stay in studio.
I get asked what it's like to be married to a famous man. And I wonder, because I did not marry a famous man. I made the name famous.
I just love, I mean, the humor is all over that family, and it's not just humor, but also people that have done the work of justice. As we move in, that video brings us into the space of thinking about heritage. And I've used this video as well, but I want to place it today for our own focus around thinking upon heritage and well-being. And we have Glenda Wildschut, who's with us in studio. Thank you to Carla Nutzer for your statement. And this is what Carla says to us at this time. Nurses rock, from one ex-nurse to another. Thank you for sharing your story with us, Glenda. Yes, thank you, Carla, for being part of the show. And please share it on. Yes, I also have been moved by just reading about Glenda, knowing of a journey. So if you ever thought, doing the work of nurses, frontline workers, here we have what today people say is frontline workers or are frontline workers in the world who became a justice advocate. And what an amazing story. But as we cross over into thought leadership, let's receive these words from Bishop Tutu around the focus of Ubuntu. And primarily, as I put this forward, we're going to then be using it to tap into the thought leadership of what Glenda Wildschut has to say around heritage and well-being. Let's check this out together.
Africa is the birthplace of Ubuntu, the ancient spirituality of humanity's oneness with our Creator, the other, and nature. Together with humanity's team, I dream of a new world and a new humanity, a humanity that expresses Ubuntu. Ubuntu, Ubuntu, Gabantu. I am.
I dream of a new world, a new humanity. Glenda, as I have you in studio today, I'd love for you to share with us some of your critical reflections as you think upon our heritage and our well-being. What is it that you've prepared for us to think upon?
So, I often have these little giggles when people from my community talk about their European heritage and talk about it as if that is the only heritage that they have. And I often wonder why it is that it's been so hard for many of us to talk about the heritage of slavery, the heritage of, as Archbishop Desmond has said, our African heritage, our indigenous heritage, and the heritages of our the ethos and the values that have come through the ages, through our continent and through our indigenous heritage. Of course, we are now in a particularly interesting phase in South Africa where there are several projects like the Camisa project, which is a project, Camisa, for example, by the way, is the word of the sweet waters that come through from Table Mountain, from Hurikwaga, and runs through the Herengracht in the Cape and down into Table Bay. So the Camisa project talks about the people of the Cape and how the Cape was peopled. And so through this project and through the thinking and participating with those who are involved in the project, it gives one such a sense of pride, such a sense of belonging, such a sense of rootedness, that we are from here, but grounded from here. And that means that since we are grounded, we are then able to move ahead to wherever we are, because we know where we come from. That's the first thought about the sort of the more physical heritage. But what is it about our own spiritual heritage? What is it that makes us who we are? And so the physical, where we come from, but the spiritual, what is it that connects us as human beings? That's an important heritage that we always need to keep in focus, because that's what makes us human. That's what makes us people. That's what makes us special. And that is what infuses what we know to be Ubuntu.
Beautifully said, Glenda. And as you say that, kind of in more contemporary, relaxed terms, it's very much easy for me to tell you about my cousins that are living in the north in Johannesburg, and my family that are living it up. But I don't want to be connected to my family that might be living in the south. Or in another way, I'd like you to know about those who I actually save their names with their real names on my contact list. But I've got family that I will save their names with AKAs, not to let you know who they are. And many of us don't want to be connected to the side of our lives that are sometimes, it feels like we're ashamed of that. And especially here in South Africa, the way that you said it, I think I speak from an African Indian perspective in the race terms of the landscape within South Africa. We've also needed to take a hold of, and I've had to speak about the fact that I am proudly African, having Indian ancestry and heritage, and in a racialized world being called Indian, while I have no nationality connections to India at all. I mean, okay, in the heritage of maybe back to the 1800s, late 1800s, 1890, 1910. But to take a hold of, that heritage of being African Indian. And as you say that, I love the way you put it forward to us, that we sometimes want to talk about, my European connections, but we don't want to talk about our African connections. I think in South Africa, for us, we've been named as Indians, but what does that mean? More especially in my own journey of linking to my heritage. Why am I so dislocated from embracing my Africanness? Why? And I mean, hey, I didn't know, but check it out. You named it. It's right here. Africa is our home. It's our place. And so, beautifully said. If I may say, what's been disruptive for me, as I journey with you in this conversation, and then hear from you, Glenda, the disruptive learnings have been how we've needed to remind people about where it is that we come from, in some way to help people embrace a journey of empathy. In the work that we've done around What's Your Story, just by people telling where they've come from, you kind of make connections. I remember doing a process work which you will know very well, the History River. And in organizational development, we use it around people just identifying where they've come from, at certain memories of the time over like 50 years. But the irony of the story was the person who was sharing the story in the moment before we told the stories through the history river, as an HR consultant, this person was busy naming and shaming how we do recruitment in this day. We need the best of the best was their articulation. But as this person told the story, I was listening, and the story was told like this, that they went for an interview, they weren't even shortlisted, and they got turned away. But sitting at a beauty parlor, having a haircut, crying about the fact that they didn't get the job, a lady sitting next to her says to her, well, what happened? What took place? Why are you crying? She said, well, I went to this company and, I didn't get the job. And the lady said, no, just hang on a second. Picked up the phone, called somebody that she knew at the company. Boom, zimzalabim, through networks. The lady that she was sitting next to actually had a family member who was a so-called boss in the industry. This led the HR consultant to almost 20 years of life in this organization. But as we listened through the history river, we were able to say, but look at this. This is how you've built your life. You were given an opportunity even when you were not shortlisted. How is it that we today, in a democratic South Africa, still dislocate people from opportunities of work because we've laden heavy recruitment requirements and criteria? It's almost like we forget where it is that we come. Now, I'm not saying that those criteria are not important, but they cannot be criteria that are unjust and unfair and locking people out of opportunities. So that's what disrupts me today. And I put it on the table because I know you can deal with it and also give us some of what is disrupting you.
Oh, hey, Seth, you're getting heavy now, no?
Ma'am, bring it, because I know you can handle it. You've seen trauma, you've seen war, so bring it.
You know, what you are saying is actually something that was one of my biggest headaches as Director of Transformation at UCT. Because you are articulating what is the standard when we're saying we want the biggest, the best, the brightest, the most articulate, the most talented. And how do we define what that is? What criteria do we use to determine who is the best and the most suitable for the job or for the course? So those were the difficult decisions that we had to make. And I think that the decolonization project was the most, I suppose, disruptive. The decolonization process helped us to rethink what we regard as the best, the brightest, the most accomplished. Because it had to get us to think about what is the journey that people have to go through in order to prove, particular people from disadvantaged communities, who have to prove 4, 5, 6 times more than somebody who comes from an affluent community to show that that person is better and brighter and more accomplished than their counterpart. So that is something that, always makes one think twice about what standards, how do we determine what those standards are, and and that doesn't mean that we should disregard excellence. We should always strive for excellence, but what measures do we put in place to be able to determine what that excellence is?
Glenda, and I thank you for that, because I think if we talk reconciliation in light of heritage and well-being, these are the difficult conversations when you say it's getting heavy, but it's real. It continues to happen. And I speak to you now in some way as as one that is a generation coming behind you. You know, Trevor Sampson sang that song for us in a church context. And may those who come behind us find us faithful. I'll stop there because I can't do it in opera voicing. Maybe if I did in opera, I have to be, and may those who come behind us. Okay, let me leave it there.
Good try, Seth.
Good try. But you can see opera was never my forte. In our schools that we grew up, there was no opera. There was more like hip hop and kwaito, baby.
Not in our schools either. Only in my high school. Only in my high school.
Let me say though, as we, in light of the heaviness of it, as we think upon, you know, these issues of decolonization and transformation and what you've experienced, how is it that you were able to at least get some work done? Now, I know when I say it's been disruptive, transformation in and of itself is sometimes an idea, a projected hope that we can say it's in motion, but we've not arrived. But what is it that kept you going through the work, if we can learn from some of your work, and how is it that you kept your, if I can say, kept your humanity and kept yourself together through the time? And maybe there's also spaces where you didn't.
No. I mean, there were moments when I really felt, okay, I need to give up now. It's too hard. I need to put it in a too hard drawer and close the drawer, you know. But I think that the sense of optimism, sort of a very stubborn sense of optimism that I have, has kept me going. I always felt that there's hope. My father taught me the phrase that there's always hope in the human breast. And so, as I remember him today, this month is his birthday month, and he's passed on 5 years ago. But that is something that he taught me, that there's always hope, and that if you keep hoping, or in a more sort of Christian sense of the word, trusting, then you can achieve what you set out to achieve. And so, as you correctly said, transformation isn't a once-off project. It's an ever ongoing project. It's a process. Transformation is always a process. And so just when you think that you've achieved it, you've just arrived, then there are more things to be done, more work to be done. And so you keep going because you recognize, well, I recognize that it's an ongoing project. You know, just to add to that, Seth, if I may,
please do.
Part of one of the very, very difficult assignments I had was when I was on the World Council of Churches. I was asked to lead a delegation to Sierra Leone, a delegation of church leaders to Sierra Leone, and that was just at the time of the signing of the peace agreement. They called the Lomé Peace Agreement in Sierra Leone, and it was about the time to implement this peace agreement. But we know from the story that the rebels resisted, the RUF resisted implementing their part of the agreement. And so the World Council of Churches assignment to us, and I was leading the delegation, was to assist the church leaders there to convince the RUF to get involved with the agreements. And one of the agreements was to allow the child soldiers to be released from rebel lines. And so I was asked to go and see Fode Sanko, who was the leader of the RUF, he agreed to see me and one other colleague, but made me wait outside his house for 48 hours before he allowed me to come in to see him. Allowed us, it was two of us, to go and see him. Anyway, the story is that we had to ask him to allow the child soldiers to be released from rebel lines. The outcome of that meeting was that the children were released the next day, but the fallout of that was that all commercial airlines were ceased from Sierra Leone, from Freetown. So we were stuck in Sierra Leone with the rebels and the child soldiers roaming around with huge AK-47s and assault rifles in Freetown. Just at that time, I got a phone call from home to tell me that my son, my 2-year-old son, had drowned in our swimming pool here at home. So there I was, stuck in Sierra Leone, having got this news and not being able to get out of Sierra Leone at the time. Now, the reason why I'm telling this story is about the feeling at the time that I was doing God's work, but then God had actually put this loss on me. But throughout this entire period of time, I did not lose hope. Somehow there was a glimmer of hope that there would be redemption, that there would be a healing. And that is the kind of hope and a redemption feeling and story that I keep in my heart. And I use that as a way of supporting those who feel hopeless and lost and desolate. And that's the hope that I also have. That's the feeling of redemption that I have when I think about a transformation story.
Wow, Glenda, I'm so humbled just to hear you and journey with you. Sometimes when you think upon it, just out of that story kind of lets you know why hope must stay alive in the midst of trauma, personal trauma, community trauma. I mean, here you are in a war-torn, if I can use that descriptor, war-torn country, trying to fight for the rights of children, losing your own child, and you still have to face the pain and the being dislocated from home. I'm so humbled just to hear that. In a way, I sometimes am moved to think how we are mindful and reminded that we got to keep in our generation doing the work as we come behind elders that have gone before us with a greater tenacity, a greater courage, and to have this untoward, if you like, untoward, out of context, irregular belief that we can make it against all odds. Even now, when in Joburg South we've been seeing great difficulty under the pressure of COVID-19. We've been acknowledging, the pandemic or shadow pandemic of racism with Black Lives Matter and how people continue to feel dislocated. We've been working with people that have faced domestic violence and gender-based violence, and also the heated conversations and robust dialogue that is required to shift the pulse through churches and non-profits and other religious organizations. So I'm challenged today and encouraged by your words. Glenda, as we draw towards a sign of hope, a call to service and action, we have so many issues in our country. I know that you are a person of hope. In some ways, like Bishop Tutu says, we must be prisoners of hope. You clearly, through your story, have become that. But how, or what may I say, is your message to us as a country, as global citizens in such a time as this?
It's interesting because I just reread Barack Obama's book, which is called The Audacity of Hope.
Wow. A beautiful book it is.
So one has to have the audacity to have hope. And that it should be like a badge of honor. I hope, I look forward, because hope is a forward-looking, it's an aspirational stance. And if we have the audacity of hope, then we will be able to deal with the most, and we as South Africans are like that. We can deal with the most difficult situations. We have that within us. I mean, the world marvels at us that we are able to have a transition which is relatively peaceful. We can relive those days again. We must just have hope.
Glenda, I'm going to carry those words in my heart. Something that I've been reflecting on, which I'll say to you, is how do we get involved to do the work? Just today, I had a conversation with Uncle Siu from Extension 6 in Lenasia. He's part of a faith-based community that we're a part of. And we were talking about, he just lost his wife, a month ago. And he was back in the church space with me. And I said, Uncle Siu, what is it that you are passionate about? You know, at age 72, he's possibly lived a great portion of his life. But, I mean, he's got thinking ability. He's lived a life taking care of his family. And he's living in a context where there's many young people and many younger families that are struggling. I said, Uncle Siu, what can we do together? And, I mentioned to him, what can we, and what came up was, do you like gardening? Can we use gardening as a way that you can work with younger men in our area? And maybe you take a piece of ground in the churchyard that is not being used. And can we do planting that's out there? I know a friend of mine who's been working in soccer and development for many years, and I and Marisha were afforded the opportunity to do a wedding of a couple that both know difficulty, but the young man has had to heal himself from drugs and gone through rehabilitation work. And my friend who ran a soccer program had the honor to journey with this young man who now today has claimed back his life. So these are some of the interventions or innovations that we need to take a hold of and want to think upon about in light of this troublesome economy. How can we innovate? How can we create microeconomies of well-being, not just economies of productivity. And profit. So Glenda, I mean, as you've been thinking and as we come to close, what is it that we may be thinking upon a well-being economy? And as you come from, your work of psychology, nursing, justice, what can we do to establish an economy of well-being in such a time as this?
So I think thinking about, families and working with families and small and communities, starting small. I think very often those of us who are interventionists, we want to have like a big campaign or something big. But just to work with families, assisting young people with parenting skills, working on strengthening the family situation in whichever configuration it is. And I'm not talking about mom, dad, and 2.5 children. I'm talking about whatever configuration there is for families, that we can work together and help, particularly our young men, to help our young men with anger management, to help them to learn to love What does it mean to love the next person, to love their partner, to love their siblings, to love their parents, and how does that manifest itself? I think it's really to get back to as basic as that. And then one of the things that I think people like yourself, Seth, is to really look at what are the appropriate rites of passage that we can have for young people. We've lost that. We don't have these important rites of passage anymore. Markers in our journey, in our lives, that mark and that signify, that act as cornerstones for our life journey. Those are the important things that need to happen. And people like yourself, we should be thinking of innovative ways in which we can have these markers, life markers for our young people. So those are my thoughts about strengthening family, strengthening community, and by way of ritual, having these life markers.
I love it. Just listen to that. Glenda Wildschut talking about innovative ways, even in a time of corona, in a time of shadow realities and pandemics of racism and gender-based violence. We don't have to go big. Start small, maybe with families, in the broad, diverse configuration that they are. Markers. And Glenda, as we close, maybe if you're out there and you know about the work that you want to get committed to, if you're a young nurse and you didn't know that nursing is an amazing career that could end up being connected to justice, here's Glenda Wildschut. Glenda, from my home to your home, a part of the work we're doing with in such a time as this, together with Heartlines and SACLI and SACC, the connections to IJR, the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, the Institute of Memories. What beautiful organizations that have done amazing work. We can't give up. We have hope. Thank you so much. From myself and Glenda Wildschut, peace out to everybody else. Glenda, you can say goodbye as I get ready to rock with you as we close the show.
Bye-bye, everybody.
So everybody,
So good to
from me and Glenda, right here on In Such a Time as This, we bring you Marcus Imos, one of the artists that I just love hearing. And we'll take it out with that kind of music. It might not be opera, but here we go with some hip hop.
Sure anymore, who is knocking at my door. All the people that I knew acted funny when I speak the truth, but I don't care. Let my cerebellum fly, cause I be the child of the Most High.
So peace out, Glenda. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you so much. See you next week on In Such a Time as This. Thank you, Glenda. Bye for now.
All the people that I knew.